polarization is a hot topic in the country, that the country is very polarized. You're a person who has rightful instinctive reactions to how we're framing issues. Do you agree with the framing of that the country is polarized?
Yes, I suppose we are polarized. Obviously, the January 6th riots are a symbolic representation of that. But I also think that much of this has been framed in terms of machine politics. So Republicans, moderate Republicans, Trump Republicans versus progressive Democrats, centrist Democrats, Joe Manchin Democrats. And so I think, it's really important to kind of remember that machine politics and parties are not neutral, right? That there is a way in which they also have an interest in vaulting these kinds of differences and putting them forward for us, so that it becomes like a reproduction of rooting for sports teams, right? So you've got to vote Democrat no matter what, but the Democrats are also part of the problem. And so if we want to talk about the polarization of populations, we also have to really take a cold, hard look at the way that these parties are not alleviating problems and also contributing to the polarity, because it's a way of winning in the immediate moment. And so we're not encouraged to think long-term because there's an emergency at our midst. And that emergency is identified with polarization. And so, we're shocked that people can vote for Trump. But what I would say is, well, but what are the conditions of that? How do we think about the fact that the Clinton administration signed NAFTA and offshored manufacturing jobs to countries that didn't have labor protections? How do we think about the fact that, and he's a blue dog Democrat, right, from Arkansas. How do we think about the fact that the Clinton administration wrote some of the most regressive welfare policies in the country in 1992, and that he did so even as the governor of Arkansas? And that was a 1996 reform that he passed a radical regressive immigration act, also in 96, that he passed a radical criminalization bill, three strikes you're out, also in 96. These are also part of that polarization. We need to remember history, right? This is not just, oh, Trump just emerged out of nowhere. He's tapping into a deep dissatisfaction. It's not justifiable by any means, but this is a deep dissatisfaction. So when we start offshoring jobs, we need to think about that. Like anyone whose property is disposed, whose ability to make an income is eradicated, you're going to get pissed. I'm not saying that this also hasn't happened to African Americans and to immigrants, but there is also a way in which, part of the scapegoating when that happened was to insist on solidarity between white working class and white elites, which was reproduced there, and to kind of throw immigrants under the bus and to say, well, you know what? It's not really that we offshored your jobs, it's that these immigrants are coming and taking them. And by the way, there's a war in Iraq in 1992 also. And so those are part of foreign policies, right? Foreign wars that are very much a part of our domestic antagonisms. So the polarization is absolutely there, but it has a very long, much more complicated history that involves the complicity of liberals and leftists as well.